get to hear a special blessing from our choir. bless you all. Amen. Thank you all so much. That was fantastic. I want to say one more time. I know I had to restrain myself. Yeah. Hopefully so, because there's, say that just do it again, in the season of Advent or Christmas, and then do it again in July. Okay, because I'm ready with Hallmark and everything then for more Christmas again and everything. So thank you all so much. I know you all have worked hard for that, and it's such a delightful medley there, and just so much joy and love in that. Thank you all so much. The scripture today comes from a book that we may read quite often, Zephaniah. I tell you, the 3rd chapter, verses 14 through 20. And after you hear it, you'll say, I should have read that more often. Because I had to ask for forgiveness by having my pages sticking together. Because I thought, bless those Zephaniah there. Zephaniah 3:14. First word, sing. Good job. Sing, daughter Zion. Shout aloud, Israel. Be glad and rejoice with all your heart, daughter Jerusalem. The Lord has taken away your punishment. He has turned back your enemy. The Lord, the King of Israel, is with you. Never again will you fear any harm. On that day they will say to Jerusalem, do not fear Zion. Do not let your hands hang limp. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. I will remove from you all who mourn over the loss of your appointed festivals, which is a burden and a reproach for you. At that time I will deal with all who oppressed you. I will rescue the lame. I will gather the exiles. I will give them praise and honor in every land where they have suffered shame. At that time I will gather you. At that time I will bring you home. I will give you honor and praise among all the peoples of the earth when I restore your fortunes before your very eyes, says the Lord. Thanks be to God for the people of God, God's holy word. Carol helped us out with our sermon today in the children's sermon by helping us to remember some of our Christmases past, when we were children, of what Christmas was like in our homes, and with all those different places that you're visiting as you flash back to what it was like when you were 3 years old, 5 years old, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18. 108, and everywhere in between, because we all have those memories, and I pray that they overall give us great joy as we think back to those special gatherings, those special moments of coming together, those long nights of anticipation, of waiting to get to see what was in those packages under the tree. All of those memories. We remember with joy, and then the frenzy that would come as the papers would fly. And, as someone might think, a sweater, a Christmas sweater, and how wonderful that is. But of course, as we think about that, I think back over Christmas as I began to think about what Christmas was like, and as that tradition began to grow, with our family, as multiple generations were added to the family, and how the joy increased with that. But also, what a difference it began to make when I began to understand, well, hey, this is somebody's birthday. and about Jesus' birthday, that Christmas took on a whole new level of meaning. And the songs began to make a lot more sense. I began to hear the story of good news. Then I began to think about, with my involvement in church, of Christmas programs, of having to learn lines and getting dressed up in different outfits and different costumes, and trying to learn new songs, and sometimes saying, well, could you sing this line of We Three Kings? And then after hearing me, well, maybe not. All those different things of the deepening message of Christmas. But sometimes I forget. Sometimes I get caught up in Christmas. Sometimes I begin to think, wow, so much to do, so little time to do it. As we begin to see the beauty of our sanctuary, inside, outside, family life center, homes, everything else, that we begin to think, wow, there's a lot that we all get to do. And then we begin about shopping and thinking, what do we get? That we sometimes begin to just think, wow, I can't believe that it's only 9 days away. And then when I say that, you feel like your blood pressure does something strange. We've got nurses. Yeah. And we got clinics close by. But we begin to think about all the things that's going on, even as pastor. That's why I always say, I'd like to do it in July. And sometimes that's where I say, I'd just like to be able to have two bookshelves that come together. I could open up and enjoy the tree, and those other things. I could use some Christmas. Because I love this time of the year, and I love, all the decorations and all the songs and everything. I get a lot of mileage out of it. It's the most wonderful time of the year, appropriately and inappropriately for my teachers and student friends and everything. But we think about, sometimes we forget, and then we have to pause and say, Lord, help me to remember. Israel forgot. They were sometimes a very forgetful people. Israel's history, sometimes they forgot the great acts of salvation. Sometimes they forgot that they were brought out of slavery. Sometimes they failed to remember the passing through the Red Sea. Manna and quail being provided. The promise of a promised land, and not being ready to enter into the promised land, of having to wait and to wander through the wilderness. And sometimes they forgot, and they worshiped golden calves and other idols. Zephaniah lived in one of those periods of time when God's people had forgotten. Not exactly sure when it was written, or what time in the history of forgetfulness that Zephaniah was called to share. Perhaps a word of judgment, of saying, you need to straighten up. You need to do better. You need to remember. You need to put God first. And Zephaniah not only got to bring tough news, but on this occasion he got to bring good news. He got to say, God has forgiven you. You're going to get to go home. What good news it is to hear whenever we have been chastised, or when we are being held accountable, or when we are put face to face with the mirror and we see as God has seen us, broken and forgetful. those words, you are forgiven. A new chapter, a new day, a new beginning. And we begin to sing, as Zephaniah said, sing, rejoice, delight. You are forgiven. What good news it is. But how did they get to that place? One of the things I think about, with the lost sheep, I always say it begins blade by blade, bit by bit. Because that's how we begin to forget. Is that we begin to increase our distance or lessen our intensity in our relationship with God, with Christ, with God's people. We begin to separate. We begin to look to the grass that is greener on the other side. And we think, well, God, I'd like to have something I could hold, like a golden calf. Or everybody else is doing it. And then we begin to find that distance to have grown. And that forgetfulness to increase. Sometimes we just get so busy that God gets crowded out. Sometimes we just get lazy. Sometimes those infamous killer sheets, especially on Sunday mornings, don't want to let go. And we don't have the fight or the drive to say, I can get up. I can get moving. I can win this victory. And so we began to forget. I remember as a youth, forgetting with a broken arm. I don't want to go with the cast. I don't want to answer all those questions. Then I need to have a toenail removed. I don't want to go with just one shoe. I don't want to answer why I have a bread sack on my foot. And so I eventually got where I wasn't going. And when I was on the basketball court, bread sack and all, I could hear the church bells ringing as you all sang. Conviction, yes. God's Spirit, yes. Forgetfulness, evening. But the day came that I began to think back, where did I lose that? As I began to hear friends at lunchtime talking about their faith, about church, about God, that my memory began to stir. And I began to look back and long for those days when God seemed so real instead of a distant memory, something that was once important, but not so important anymore. Perhaps even thinking back to, as a 4-year-old, sitting in church for the first time at my brother's wedding and thinking, what is this place? And something of home. And I think first calling to be given. That we begin to retrace our steps, that we begin to think, where did I lose that? Have you ever lost your keys or your wallet or something that you began to look for? And what do? You begin to retrace your steps, physically and mentally. Where did I have it last? Where could it have been when I lost it? And that we began to retrace our steps. So when did I see it last? And we go back and hopefully we'll have found it. Sometimes we have help. Someone will say, hey, I found this. Or we get a call and saying, is this yours? Sometimes when we begin to forget and we're trying to remember, there are those things that will help us to begin to remember. Little rhymes, little sayings, little songs. A few weeks ago, I was helping Meredith and Daniel with their fireplace. Me and natural gas and fire, a good combination. And then I'm saying, do I turn it to the right? Do I turn it to the left? And Meredith says, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Now, I'm like, who taught you that? I know I didn't. And then I said, but is this one of those exceptions? I before E or E before I? And not wanting to do more damage than what I had done and not to blow it up. And then so you begin to think about sayings. And then as I began to remember, I began to hear those voices. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Forgive us as we forgive. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Amazing grace. Save the wretch like me. How great thou art, living by faith. And you begin to fill in those devices that God calls us home. And we begin to remember, and we begin to have joy once again, that we are able to begin to sing again, on key, off key, with a hum, many different ways that we begin to remember, and the joy begins to be ours. We don't have always everyone who has a history or a memory in today's day and time. Or it is so clouded or so fragmented that we have such a wonderful opportunity and a tremendous responsibility as a people of faith of beginning to tell the story so that people can begin to understand. We have a lot of re-education that we have to do. God gets an awful bad rap so many times that we need to stop the misunderstanding and to say, let me re-educate you. Let me give you Christian education. Let me help you to know the God that I know, the Creator, the Redeemer, the Sanctifier, Sustainer. Let me tell you about the community of faith, and that we begin to share those good news. Damage control, rest assured that we begin to try to help create a strong foundation that one can remember fondly those wonderful things, and to be able to have forgiveness for those devastating moments. The prophet Zephaniah said, sing aloud, shout, exult with all your heart. Don't forget. Don't forget. What are those things that we maybe have forgotten or lost in the faith? Sometimes we have to just stop and say, Lord, can we talk? And we begin to get reacquainted. And we begin to remember. We begin to create new depth of relationship. We begin to create new experiences. that will become a part of our memory store. We'll remember, and we won't forget. Israel began to sing again of God's salvation, of God's deliverance, of God's gifts. They began to tell the stories again. And for us to be able to do that, we begin to do that with our own congregation, of hearing the stories of the faith, of the history of our church, where we get grafted in, where we get connected in, where we begin to be a part of the story. Some of us with longer histories, some with lesser histories. But it's our story that we begin to tell, and that we begin to share, and that people begin to get to say, well, let me check it out. Let me experience God. So if you're in that memory spasm right now, or forgetfulness, or just too busy to think, Lord, let me spend a little time with you. Let me walk down memory lane. Let's begin to celebrate. Recently, I got to celebrate our 37th anniversary this week, and I looked at her and I said, was it this week or was it last week? How long ago was the 12th? Felt like it was already been a long time passing. But one of the questions I'll invariably ask Teresa, well, what were you doing 37 years ago today? What were you doing 37 years ago tonight? Sometimes I like to debate her, and I think I said this year, what were you doing 38 years ago today? And then she says, running around my head chopped off. 38 years ago, probably, but, aggravating, there. But we begin to, get to walk through memory lane. And one of the things I always say, well, if we're not at the funeral home, it's a good anniversary. Whether we do anything else or not. But we got to remember, and I do this oftentimes with church, with my walk with God. Those times that God was in my sea of forgetfulness, in those times when God was calling. One of the things I'm reminded of is those horrible words in the Bible that I run across that says, and the word of the Lord was rare in those days. And I think, God shut up. And I'm really more convinced that God is like me, never shuts up. I think God talks all the time, but we don't always listen. And even with this time of Zephaniah and the forgetfulness, I think that God maybe had been tap dancing around them and everything else. And Zephaniah finally got said, hey, we don't have to live in the past or in this unfaithful position. And that God began to use them to share the good news. Sing, shout, exalt, rejoice. So where we are in our journey, individually, collectively as a family, corporately as a church, faithfully as the body of Christ, we've got a message to tell. We've a story to tell to the nations. May this Christmas be the one that we remember, and that we begin to tell, and that we are not silent, that we do sing and shout, that we do exalt, that we do rejoice, that we do remember. And we want to help others to hear our story, as to hear their story. It's the greatest message of all. When the choir was singing, I was hearing a little bit of the greatest show on earth music in the background, and that story there. The we have got the greatest message on earth. Share it. There's a world out there that will receive it. Rejoice, shout, sing, and dance. God's gift given to you for us. Rejoice. Amen. Let us join together in singing Joy to the World. And we'll be singing, I guess, all the verses. Is that what we're doing? 246. Okay, first, second, and last. 246. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks that you give us joy, that you give us the story, that you give us the relationship. Let us go forward from this place being mindful of how blessed we are to have the greatest gift, the greatest message, the greatest relationship, the greatest joy.